Hey guys, welcome back. Today, Casey's going to walk us through some CAD functionality focusing on the mouse hand and things that you can do to speed up your drafting speed. So let's learn.
Welcome back everyone, this is Casey. Today we're going to be going over basic AutoCAD drafting guidelines. So today our primary focus is to get you familiar with all the different commands that we use on a day-to-day basis, to get familiar with the cursor, how AutoCAD works, and the best ways that you can increase the amount of speed that you have when drafting. So the first thing that I want to focus on is I want to focus on the cursor itself. So your right hand, well, most people are right-handed unless you have a left-handed mouse, but whichever hand you have your mouse, this is going to be like the most crucial thing that you're ever going to use when doing CAD, right? The faster you are with the mouse, the better, and the more you're familiar with your cursor, how different UCSs work, the faster you're going to be able to draft, especially when you're drafting with really odd-shaped properties or things that aren't at specific 90-degree increments in one another. So the first thing I want to talk about is the selection box when using the cursor itself, right? So if I click here in the middle and I drag off to the left, you can see that I'm creating a big green selection box. If I drag over to the right, this box changes to the color blue. So anytime that I click and drag to the left, it's going to be green. Click and drag to the right, it's going to be blue. The difference is that when you click and drag to the left, anything that your green selection box touches, just touches at any point, it will select, right? So I just barely touched this 15-foot building setback piece of text, and it's going to select the whole thing, right? If you drag to the right and it's blue, it's only going to select things that are entirely enclosed within your selection box. So right here, if I were to click right here, the only thing that this is going to select is this piece of text right here that says 83 feet. Right, so that's my only singular selection. It doesn't select anything else that the box touches, only things which are entirely enclosed. If I want to select this block right here with this number 12 that counts out my parking spaces, I can simply click and drag such that the only object that's entirely enclosed within my selection box is that parking, right? So we got a couple of these parking lines here, not just the blocks. That's why it selected those. Say I just wanted to mess with this dimension here, could just grab like that. But if I were to do it the other way, like this, it's going to grab all this other stuff, right? So it's really important that you understand how your cursor works so that you can select what you're intending to select, and you can select a lot of things really fast. If I want to select all of these stripes here for parking, I can simply click, drag like this. So if I click and hold rather than just click and drag, if I click, hold, and drag, now I'm using this lasso, and anything that this green touches, it's going to select. So for example, if I wanted to select just these 5 blue lines here, I could click, hold, drag, right? And so the only thing that my green box touched was these 5 polylines here. So that's the only thing that I selected. Same thing with the blue. You can click and drag, right? So I can click and drag. If I want to be a little bit more specific about only grabbing this block, I can click and drag a circle around it, just like that. So I didn't pick up any of these lines that I didn't want. Right? So it's extremely important that you understand how your selection boxes work so that you can grab what you intend to grab. Okay, the next important thing about your cursor is your UCS. So when you open up a CAD file, unless the UCS has been previously set, if it's a brand new file, your cursor is going to look like mine does now, where it's green, it's at 90-degree angles, and it's straight up and down. As you can see in the bottom corner here, you have your positive Y direction is straight up and down, or your positive Y is straight up, your negative Y would be straight down, and your positive X is going to be to the right. If you use our middle mouse button functions, if I hold Control Shift and then I select a line which I would like to set my UCS to, such as this line here, it's going to completely change the way that my cursor looks, and you can see that the green line on my cursor now is my Y direction, the longer green line showing the positive Y direction, and the shorter green line showing the negative Y direction. Same thing with the red line, except the red line is my X direction now. Why is this important? Well, it's important because when you have your ortho turned on, now it's going to ortho 90 degrees based off of whatever your UCS is set to, right? So your cursor is what shows you what your UCS is, right? So your selection boxes still work exactly the same as they did before. Okay, but now we have a different UCS, which changes the way that our ortho draws. It also changes the way that you paste or copy things. So for example, say I wanted to copy this 15-foot building setback piece of text and I wanted to paste it along this building setback line, except I wanted it to be oriented the way that the way that it should be, which is straight along the building setback line. Well, what I can do is I can set my UCS such that it's positive in the Y direction, going up, text along with the text being right side up, okay, and so that my cursor looks like this. I can copy it, and now I can come over to this building setback line and I can do the exact same thing, right? And then when I paste, now it's already going to be oriented the way that I want it to, right? So your copy and paste commands take into account what your UCS is when you're copying and pasting. So this way, instead of having to select this guy, copy, paste it over here, and then run some sort of command like RP or rotate to try and rotate it to look the way that I want it to, right? Like this, or clicking on it and looking for the rotation here in the properties pane. I can simply just copy it from one UCS, change my UCS, and then paste it, right? So once you get a good understanding of this, you'll be able to copy, paste, move things around with a very, very high level of efficiency. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our custom mouse functions. So I just talked about them a little bit when going over the cursor itself, but we're just going to go ahead and do a little bit deeper of a dive on these. So we have 3 custom mouse functions, right? So again, we're still talking about your hand that controls your mouse and all the capabilities you can have using just that hand, right? So the control middle button function is going to start a line. So if you ever want to just draw a line, you can go ahead and just do control middle button, and now you're going to draw on lines. Keep in mind these are lines and not polylines, so they're not going to be connected to one another. You can select them all and join them, however, to make them a polyline, but you're drawing lines, not polylines. If you do shift plus middle button, that's going to turn your ortho on. So if you have this toolbar here at the bottom, this guy right here delineates your cursor orthogonal, okay, and if you hit shift middle mouse button, as you can see, that is going to highlight blue or unhighlight blue based off of whether or not I toggle that on and off. All right, and then if I do control shift middle button, right, that's going to toggle my UCS. So it's going to set my UCS to whatever my cursor is on. So say I wanted to set my UCS to this line right here, I can hover my cursor over it, and then I can do control shift middle mouse, and that's going to set my UCS to that item right there. And then if I'm not hovering over anything, right, just out in open space here in my model space, then I do control shift middle button, it's going to go back to world, okay? Or it'll cycle between your set UCS. So if you ever want to save a UCS for later use, you can set it to that UCS and then type in the command UCS, and now you can type in NA for named, and then you can hit save, and you can enter a name to save. So I might enter this, this guy's name as site. This is the UCS that I'm using for my site. Okay, this UCS already exists, so I'm just going to hit yes to replace it. Cool, now we have UCS site. So there's my world, and if I do control shift middle mouse again, it's going to go to site. So it's going to go view, world, site, view, world, site, and it'll cycle through all of your different saved UCSs. So say I wanted to save one more like this. I could, again, UCS, NA for named, save, and I can name this guy site 2. Okay, and now when I'm in open space and I do control shift middle mouse, it's going to cycle through view, world, site, site 2, and so forth. Okay, and then if I ever want to delete them, again, UCS, named, delete, and then enter the name that I'd like to delete. So I'll go ahead and delete site 2. Okay. So once you get used to using all these middle mouse functions, and there's one more that we're going to go over really quick. There's middle mouse D. This is how you measure things, right? So it's a quick measure. So you can measure between 2 lines. You can simply click near one of the lines, and it's going to go ahead and start your measurement from that line. So I don't have to be perfectly on this line. I can just kind of click like that, and as you can see, it's going to snap to the nearest point of that line, and then I can just kind of click near that line, and then it's going to take a perpendicular measurement for me. So in this case, I can look in my command window and see that the distance was 9 feet. So say I wanted to verify that my parking is 9 foot wide, I can do middle mouse D, click, right, and then it's gonna spit out the distance in the command window. So between these two should be 18 feet. There's 18 feet in my command window. Okay, so it's going to take a perpendicular measurement for you. This is extremely useful when you're drafting up a site like this where everything's nice and square. It's nice and orthogonal to everything else, so it's great to take really quick measurements. Okay, and so once you get a good grasp on the middle mouse button functions as well as the cursor and different UCS, you can highly expedite your drafting times and become far more efficient, and that's all with your mouse hand. So the 90% of what you're doing with those different commands is all with your mouse hand. Okay, so that entire time all I'm doing is I'm hitting Control Shift and then middle mouse or Shift middle mouse. And then I'm just clicking. I'm just using my fingers on one hand. So I can select anything that I want with a high amount of efficiency. I can copy and paste things into different orientations. I can reset my UCS. I can measure things. I can, do all of those different things just using one hand. And my other hand is barely putting in any inputs. So once we get our other hand more accommodated with our keyboard, and we can combine that high amount of efficiency in selecting things, moving things, copying, pasting things, along with a high amount of efficiency of punching in commands, you can make plans like this extremely quickly and extremely efficiently.